On today's episode, I interview Chris Burns. He's the co founder of Hustle Leaders and shares his journey from working at an agency to owning his own business. We talked about the importance of making marketing easy and fun, which is something that we can all benefit from. He provides really good insights on creating a strategy and some really simple marketing approaches that you can implement today. We also talked about individualized approach to coaching and really some concepts of direct marketing, especially in a workshop format. In this conversation, Chris and I really talked about some common mistakes people make when they're creating content, and especially in social media marketing. And we emphasize the importance of being authentic and engaging when it comes to creating your content. I can't wait for you to listen to this one. It was a great episode. Well, let's dive in. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nata Salvatori, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I'm your host, Nata Salvatori, and today I have Chris Burns with me. He's an author, coach, and co-founder of Hustle Leaders, and also the co-host of the Hustle Nation podcast. We're going to talk about all kinds of interesting things about marketing and how to make it fun again for you. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited to talk.
Awesome. We are very happy to have you with us because I know you have great stuff to share with the audience. So first, tell us where you are, what do you do right now, and then we'll backtrack a little bit into your story of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's the easy question. So, my name is Chris Burns. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin, so way up north in the Midwest. And currently, I am the co founder of Hustle Leaders, which is a sales and leadership development company, and co host of the Hustle Nation podcast, which goes hand in hand with the Hustle Leaders business.
So tell us a little bit about just your journey from, I know you're working at an agency before to then deciding to own your own business. So let's talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah, that's the harder question, requires a much longer answer.
Go for it.
So my journey has been really marketing most of my life, really dating back to high school when I studied the subject, and that was kind of my aha moment where school was fun, and I kind of knew that's probably what I wanted to do in college and maybe in my career. And sure enough, that stuck for about 20 plus years, and it was part of my job really everywhere I went, whatever I did, and learned a lot along the way about sales really being a big part of marketing and leadership being a big part of marketing because whether you're in sales in an agency or whether you are a project manager, whatever the case might be, you're leading your teammates, you're leading your clients, you're leading your boss, you're leading your team. After I don't know, after working in an agency, I went off and started my own business where I did a lot of coaching, consulting, had a very small team, and we did a lot of your typical agency stuff, websites and social media content. And I just got to a point to where I recognized that if I kept going, I'd probably burn myself out. And the thing that I enjoyed so much in life was starting to be less fun. And it was probably due to a lot of things that are more self inflicted wounds, like not charging enough, not having better boundaries, not managing my time well enough. And I just said to myself, as much as I was trying to change those things, it probably needed to be a change of scenery. And in the background, I had been building this other business with my business partner, Dustin, and we had a leadership podcast to go along with a business that primarily just had a online masterclass, and we were hopeful to have corporate engagements and some public speaking opportunities. It kind of hit me that, you know what, I want a new challenge. I want to do something new. And I think I'll always continue to have marketing in my life, some way, shape, or form. And sure enough, I still do. I even just wrote a marketing book. I really wanted to dive into something that I've been studying for a long time behind the scenes, which was sales and leadership. And so I just felt like when I got together with my business partner 2.5 years ago, he had a framework to help scale his insurance brokerage. And I had a framework that I used in marketing, part of which is very much strategic and based on things being very simple and easy to the point to where, so easy there's no excuses. And we blended this together, and his company went from being $15 million to being $30 million in the course of about a year. And that's when we knew we had something. So we decided to kind of repackage what we had to offer. And it's now what we know as Hustle Leaders, where we help businesses, mostly B2B sales companies, create a sales culture of hustle without the burnout.
Very cool. Do you feel like a lot of your journey as working for somebody first and feeling that burnout influence the way you lead your agency right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I've probably always been one that at some way, shape, or form, at some points in my life, I always knew that I'd be happiest working for myself because I'd see rules that I didn't really like or care for and say, I don't know why that's a rule. I don't know why we have to live within the confines of some of these bumpers, if you will, like if you're bowling. I've just always thought that for a lot of things in life, whether it be sales or marketing or leadership, that there are more than one way to do things. And that's part of why I think I've always recognized that I would be an entrepreneur and I could be a leader, and why I wanted to really break free from all of that.
Awesome. You do some teaching now too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had a really awesome opportunity not too long ago to become an adjunct professor of social media marketing at a local university. And that was more of a short term thing, but that was also a bucket list thing in my career where I always wanted to go back to school and teach something that I was very passionate about. Because as much as I don't think I'm very old, Nada, there was no social media marketing class when I was in college. There was almost no such thing as digital marketing. I mean, all we really had back in 2004 was websites and email marketing.
Yeah, I feel like so I went back and did some teaching too in my previous career. And it was very interesting to have to balance curriculum and things that they do need to learn from a testing standpoint in real life. Like what do they actually need to know to be successful in real life? How do you manage kind of balancing that a little bit when you were teaching?
You know, that was really hard. I'm very fortunate that I had a lot of public speaking experience going into it, so I thought that that would transition or help me transition into teaching very well. But little did I know, I'm much older than a lot of these college students, and so what they really wanted to talk about was things that are currently happening. They didn't want to read from a textbook. They didn't want to hear me talk the whole time. So I had to pivot a lot of what I did. So like you said, there was a lot of time that went into preparing the curriculum, the slide decks, the lectures every day, and gave me very much a new, profound appreciation for academia and professors, real professors, not just ones like me. What I learned was that students today want to be able to translate not so much from a book because it's funny textbooks are very much outdated, and when we're talking about in the textbook, TikTok is an emerging platform, and they just kind of snicker. Really, the best lectures that I had were the ones that were not from a book or not from a slide deck. They were very much open discussion, and it was related to a case study or it was related to something trending in the world today. And we did a case study on ourselves. Everyone had to do an audit of their own social media, and we ended up talking about it for two total lectures because each student had to present on it for about 3 minutes. And we talked about the metrics and the trends. And I've never seen my students so engaged from class. And it shouldn't be surprising because I was probably the same way, and I didn't wanna listen to a lecture the whole time or watch a video the whole time, and it's just a reminder that a lot of times what you prepare for in life isn't necessarily what you see.
100%. Yeah, and I think it being in practice, like practicing the skills and the being able to take that back to the classroom and make it relevant and giving them something that they can connect with right now versus what was in the book that was written God knows when, how many years ago, right? Definitely can help keep them engaged, and it will help prepare them better for what they're going to step into in a marketplace when it comes to getting a job and just understanding a little bit better what they can pay attention to and what social media does. Even if you're going to work for somebody, it's going to have some effect of what that does to your life and to your ability of getting employed. So
Yeah, I love that. In fact, we did one assignment with where they get to pick a local business. So I went and I contacted about a dozen businesses, and I got seven of them to sign up and agree to take groups of three to do a social media project for each of the local businesses. So they had an opportunity to treat this assignment like they would a client at an agency, and so they had to communicate, introduce themselves, and talk about, ask questions, talk about the expectations of the project, and talk about timing and roles and responsibilities. And it was really cool to see how students today are probably more capable of doing that than maybe we would have been when digital marketing agencies weren't even a thing when I was in college, right?
Yeah, what a fun assignment. Nice to give them the opportunity to practice some real life skills. That's awesome. So let's talk about your book a little bit. Marketing So Easy, It's Fun Again. Love that title. So, what are some of the core principles that you hope the readers will take away and apply to their business from your book?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked that. So, and outside of the obvious one, which is the title of the book, I'll tell you a quick story. Was when I started working for an agency, I feel very fortunate because the gentleman who hired me put me in a bit of a sales slash leadership role. As part of that, I was out in the community a lot speaking, talking about just educating people about social media and basic principles, algorithms. One of the workshops that I did was based on strategy. And the person who hired me to speak said, Chris, just want to give you some context. This audience is very beginner, they're a little bit older. And so you have to keep this as simple as possible. And I thought, well, I thought I already did that, right? And she said, "No, one of the things you have to do is you have to get strategy down to one page." And I was hoping you could provide them with a template. And I was like, yeah, I've never done that before. So I had it down to 2 pages. And she says, "Yeah, it's not, you got it. It's one page." And okay, so I did it. I obliged. I made something up kind of on a whim. And after that event, I had a lot of people, more than I ever had, come up to me and say, "That was really amazing. We just loved that." And I wrote it off. I didn't think anything of it. And then I did that same workshop again at a different place a few months later. And I had the same experience. I just kind of like was reflecting back the whole ride home. I'm like, that's really weird. I can't believe people love this. It's so simple. It's almost like I made it too simple. And of course, that's always the way I think. I always hypercritical of myself. So what happened was I started using that slide and that template into a lot of other workshops that I did, and people were always asking me if they could get that. It became part of my framework where I realized that, when I left the agency world, I tried to make things easy. And one of the big things that I've always done was strategy. Because I'll tell you this is I found probably the number one reason why so many businesses fail with marketing is because they're not strategic. They randomly sit down day to day or week to week and they just say, "Oh, what should we post? Or should we do this? Should we try that?" There's nothing strategic about that. And we can touch on that in a moment. I love, love, love to talk about strategy. But anyways, I remember when I left, I got paid a lot of money to build some really amazing strategies. And I would check back with the client a few months later. I said, "Hey, how's it going? Is it working? Are you doing the stuff?" And I would kind of find out after asking a few questions, they weren't using it. And I looked back a few months later, and I was like, maybe I can make this easy like I was told to. So I made it 15 pages. Still way too much. People just felt overwhelmed and stressed out by the thought of having this complex strategy. So I got the same thing. People just weren't using it. I thought, wow, this is so good. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, you know what? It's mostly fluff. Really, if we need to just distill this down, what is the things that they need to take action on right now? Which is like over the next couple months, and that's it. I got it down to like one page. And that's when it hit me. The only way it's going to work is if I make this easy, like so simple that when I follow up with them in a month, they'll say yes because they have no excuses. And that became the premise for everything I did was I'm going to make this so easy for you that if you're not going to do it, you either have to hire someone or something else because these are the three things you need to do that are going to generate the most results. And that's kind of the premise of it is to break it down into a few chunks, which is strategy and then implementation and then from there, you can iterate. Maybe it's content, maybe it's type of content, maybe it's storytelling, maybe it's advertising. There are a lot of little nuances in there you'll learn, but the premise of the book is create a strategy and then create an implementation plan because strategy means nothing without implementation. And implementation means nothing if your strategy is arbitrary. And oh, by the way, when I ask people questions, I'm like, hey, how did you come up with this 20% goal or this 12% goal? Well, I Googled it and it seemed realistic. And I said, well, that's made up. Well, no, I mean, I did some research on it. I said, no, that's 100% made up unless you're looking at historical data, which is, a year, 2 years worth of Google Analytics or Shopify sales, or whatever it might be, it's made up. And if your strategy is made up, you should expect, I don't care how good your implementation plan is, you should expect not a lot from any of that work that you just did. And so there's a lot of really good stuff in there that mostly learned the hard way. And I joke a lot. I tell people is like, I can tell you what works and what doesn't because I've tried all the things that don't work. I've tried a lot of things that do work too, but I for sure know all the stuff that doesn't work. And that's a big part of it because I lived that life for probably the first 10 years of my young business journey and entrepreneurial journey. And it wasn't until I got strategic and started implementation that I really saw things change for me and for my clients.
Absolutely agree that one thing without the other is not going to lead you anywhere. So that's good that you have those concepts in there. Do you feel like there's still place for a more complex strategy for people out there, or you feel like everybody should just focus on the basics and kind of take one step at a time?
Oh, I love that question. So definitely there's no one size fits all. And I'll tell you maybe a little bit of a story, which is part of the premise of what my first and the second book is written on, which was recipes. And so I had this concept a long time ago, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to have it, but I said if you travel the world and you were to ask people what is their recipe for chili, and you'll get literally millions of variations. And God forbid we debate ground turkey, ground chicken, Texas chili, white bean chili, chicken verde, chili verde. You get it. You just run the gamut. And the answer is there is no right or wrong answer because it's a recipe. And so one size fits none. The book and a lot of what I have done is mostly based around small businesses. Could be solopreneurs, could be entrepreneurs, could be companies up to maybe a million or $2 million. If you are a larger business, it is highly likely, especially a Fortune 500, that you will have a more complex strategy because you have more people involved. You have more layers of management and leadership. It's the whole more complex thing. But for the vast majority of small to medium sized businesses, I think we have to make it easier because the more complex we make anything in life, the less likely it is to be executed and executed properly. And so, yes, definitely when people read my book or they hear me talk, they'll say, "Well, Chris, this," and believe me, I've even gotten some 3-star reviews on my book like, "Well, this isn't for my business." And I make that very clear that theory is not for everyone. And I'm not offended by that. But I think for the most part, when I've read books, when I've done research, when I've hosted people on my podcast, it just becomes a reoccurring narrative and maybe an affirmation that, I am onto something with making things easier. And it also, by doing so, relieves a lot of burden, a lot of stress and anxiety because we're not bogged down by all these extra thoughts and this fluff. And that's likely what happens is the longer we make a document doesn't make it more effective. It usually makes it less effective because the premise of marketing is the most effective messages are most effective with fewer words, not more words. And same is true with strategy or anything else in business. And so it's a great question that I could probably talk about forever, but simplicity really wins in most cases.
Yeah, I love that, especially if you're really targeting that small business owner, that solopreneur. Like, we're already wearing so many hats. You have to keep things simple so they can actually get to work and get it done because there's 15 other things waiting in line to be done. So keeping that simple. And I really love the concept of individualized approach to things. When I coach my clients, one-on-one coaching is my preferred go-to because everybody's problem is a little bit different. And if you don't take the time to really dive in and figure it out, what is it that it's causing that specific business to be stuck, you're going to be trying to apply something generic that's just not going to work. And that's why, just grabbing advice at lib out there from internet and trying to apply it to your business is just going to generate a lot of frustration because you're not really taking the time to figure it out what the problem is and then address it specifically. So 100% agree on that one too.
Yeah, I find too that just asking questions is really a way that I like to kickstart a lot of conversations, whether I'm coaching someone or whatever the case is. The more information I can gather, the better off we're going to be in that conversation.
Dive a little bit more into what inspired you to create your workshop. So you have a workshop. It's why your marketing sucks and how to fix it. So, what are the main takeaways for the attendees for that workshop?
I've done a lot of public speaking, but one of the things I've found over the years is that, all the workshops, not all, I shouldn't say that. A lot of the workshops that I've attended, whether they be online or in person or, locally through a chamber of commerce, have all felt very vanilla, very, very basic and generic. And so the one thing that I've always tried to do is whenever I take stage or whenever I work with people, I want to have a very unique approach, just like my marketing and hopefully just like your marketing too. As part of that, I know that I'm sometimes very direct and that may not be the right fit for a lot of people. But I've always felt like we've got to be honest, especially when I'm talking about your marketing or anyone's marketing or business, is that if I don't, I'm not best serving my client or my people. And so I talk about why your marketing sucks and how to fix it because so many people, if their marketing isn't working, it probably sucks. And that doesn't mean it's your fault because a lot of people just don't know. They weren't told or taught in college like me, or they can't afford to pay someone, or maybe they've tried to pay people and they've got burned or it hasn't worked. And so the premise is let's just be honest, your marketing's not great. Here's how to fix it. And a lot of what I put in my book has come from that workshop. So the first couple things is let's talk about 5 or 6 things you're probably doing wrong and then how to fix them. A couple of things I'll just throw out at you and feel free to pick on them or ask other ones is most people don't have great content. This probably could be a 1 hour conversation by itself, but a lot of people default to using stock photos, both on their website and their social. And it just feels so cold and sterile. And I advise people not to do that to the point where I probably feel like a broken record. Truth is, it's just so easy to grab a cell phone and have someone take pictures of you working at your desk or pictures of you working with your client or your office or a product or service that you offer. It's just so easy to do that there's almost no excuse not to do it. And, the opposite is people go to your website or your social and they can't see you. It's like, well, why can't I see what their team looks like? Why can't I see their office or their products or whatever it is? People want to see you. And it also creates a human connection. The second one is most people are too focused on selling. They go to social media and they think, "Well, Chris, isn't that the whole purpose?" I said, "No. That is not the purpose. The definition is social, which is communication, people talking with each other, engaging and interacting, liking, commenting, sharing, in other words. And then media, which is content, photos, videos, not stock photos, your videos, not graphic designs, not promotions, not 20% off. That's not social media. And it's conversation. So it's you doing what I call my three pillars are educating people, empowering them, and or inspiring them. Now, sure, you could put a lot of other things in there, but that is social media. And as a byproduct, if you do that for let's just call it a year, people who follow you will know who you are and what you do. And when they have a need, they will come to you and they will want to work with you. I want that more than I want to be talking at people saying, "Hey, come buy for me. I've got 20% off," or "Check out my new book with free shipping." Nobody cares. If I've been able to add enough value to their newsfeed over a long period of time, they're going to say, "I like that Chris guy. Yeah, he's knowledgeable. I want to buy his book." And that's what I want. And so those are two big ones that jump out. A third and final one, which is really quick and easy, is a lot of people will tell me this when I ask questions about, "Hey, what are you doing? What's not working?" Say, "Well, like I tried TikTok or I tried Facebook ads. They don't work." I said, "Actually, they work and they work really, really well." "Okay, well, what did I do wrong?" And I said, "Well, tell me about your experience with TikTok." "Well, I posted 3 videos. It didn't work." I said, "Well, what didn't work? What were you expecting in 3 videos or 6 videos even?" "Well, I just had like 2 followers and like 50 likes." It's like, I don't see how that's a problem. What do you mean? I said, "Well, you're a toe dipper. That's number three. You can't dip your toe in the water and say, 'Oh, it doesn't work.'" Most people quit before they get to a point of determining whether or not it works. So sample size wasn't there. And the same is true with a lot of stuff in marketing. "I tried, it doesn't work." Well, most things work and they work really well if they're done properly. I've got a bunch of excuses that I debunk and demystify. And then I help people see, okay, I'm probably guilty of 2 or 3 of those at minimum. And they're all just, again, so simple. It's like, yep, I'm guilty. I could change that. I pretty much guarantee that if you change any of those behaviors in your social media, you'll see a nice jump in not only reach and engagement, but probably even some conversation and conversion too.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Delegation Secrets How to Let Go and Scale Your Business course. Are you ready to scale your business without burnout? As an entrepreneur, you're juggling everything: client work, marketing, admin, finances. It's exhausting. You build your business from the ground up, but it's time to ask yourself, how long can I keep doing it all on my own? What if you could free up time for higher level activities that truly make the needle move in your business? What if you could scale without sacrificing your sanity? It all starts with one word: delegation. The Delegation Secrets course comes with 6 different modules, and you learn everything from the mindset of delegation to identifying tasks you should delegate, build a trustworthy team, effective communication for seamless delegation, tools and processes for efficient outsourcing, and measuring success and scaling further. Let's break free together. You can find more information on accidentalceo.co/delegate-course. Now back to the episode. So I want to dive into a couple of things there. One, the concept of creating great content. So what does that really mean? So let's just talk a little bit more, because we all hear that, like, oh, you're probably not creating good content. You need to create great content. What does that mean? How do I know that my content is finally great?
Nada, I love this question. Thank you for asking it. This takes me back to something that I really love to talk about, which is perfect is the enemy of action. I tried to write a TED talk on it and I got declined twice. So maybe it's not that good of a conversation. But it's in my book, and I do talk a lot about it. And I'm going to tell you a very quick story about when I applied for a job at Quicken Loans in Detroit, which was my friend said before you take the interview, you need to read their company isms, which are basically like their core values. And one of them was good is good enough, and it resonated with me then. It's stuck with me to this day to enough to be in my book. And they said we don't want people spending too much time on stuff because basically, in other words, if you have conversations with leadership, they've translated to the point to where if you spend an hour longer on a project, a design, whatever it might be, with something that's already done and you're just trying to perfect it, you're wasting your time. And if you did that every single day or every single week, the number of hours that that equates to is unfathomable. The amount of time and money that you're wasting. And I thought to myself, like, I've always been around cultures where you had to give it your absolute best. But they said, no, your best is good enough. Don't spend extra time trying to make something perfect because perfect does not exist. And perfect to me and you are two different things. So, last thing is when I grew up as a student in grade school, high school, I was basically a C level student. I did maybe got some A's and B's on classes I loved and got some C's and D's in classes I didn't, right? Just kind of got by, probably average, below average. My family was okay with that. That's just kind of who I was. And I know other families where their son or daughter got less than an A, that was failure. But for me, C's were success. And so you have to define what good content is. So people ask me to say, Chris, well, how long should it be? Or what music should I put on? Or what about the captions? And what about the copy or the title? And I said, stop. Just no. Just go create content right now. Because if you're new to this or you're worried about what you look like or what you sound like or how to build a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel, you just have to start and give it your best. Now, if you have like some lighting, a microphone, those are all good things that'll help. But at the end of the day, if your intentions are to teach, empower, I should say, empower, inspire, or educate, that is good content. Doesn't matter how long it is, doesn't matter what your titles or captions are. Because if you're really dedicated to getting better and building an audience, those things will all improve on their own organically because you're going to be committed to learning and evolving and pivoting. Look at my YouTube channel. I mean, I've got just a little over 500 subscribers and I have almost 1,000 videos on it in about 2 years. I'm not killing it. My content's getting better. Only recently have I started to see a little spike, and it's just because we're doubling down on quality over quantity, and it takes time. My content's not perfect by any means. I don't want it to be because if it is, then that means I'm probably don't have the same output, and so I just want to keep it organic and simple, and just want to focus on adding value for people, and I think that's all you can do.
Yeah. So if I hear you correctly, great content is the one that's being put out consistently that really show your values and speak to your client and with the intent of serving that ideal client that you have.
Absolutely. Don't overthink it. Just start making content and it'll get better over time. And look at anything, we're 75 episodes in our podcast and I look back at the first couple and they're not very good. I thought they were. And then I got to 50 and I was like, "Oh, wow, we are a lot better." And now just 25 episodes later, it's unbelievable how much more natural somebody becomes on video or on a microphone and how they answer better questions or ask better questions. And so just practice. That's all it is.
The other thing that came to mind earlier when you were speaking is just this concept of resilience, right? Being resilient as you continue to put out content and continue to work on social media, because this is not a quick game. It's going to take some time, and you're going to have to truly believe in yourself because you're not going to see those results right away. If you do, they're going to be slow, but you need to keep pushing and keep working on things and just seeing that, having that vision for the future and continue to work that path and getting things done frequently, like showing up. Like you said, people buy from people that they know, they relate to. So they need to see you, they need to learn what you're about, and to be able to connect with you.
Yeah. Resilience isn't easy. It's not easy for me. You just part of it's patience too, and knowing that you're getting better and you're adding value, and have some gratitude and some empathy too, because sometimes it can be take a toll on you mentally, and so you just have to be very gracious with yourself because it is definitely a long game. I don't know anyone who's built a massive audience in a few weeks or a few months.
And if they do, they're probably not selling something easy that you
Yeah,
want to
or
go,
or they have a massive ad budget, which most of us don't have.
or an OnlyFans page on the side too. So you talk about helping businesses build that sales culture without the burnout. What are some good practical steps that you think you can share with the business owners out there to be able to achieve this?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and one of them I alluded to already. The big thing, and even for people who are very successful, where they feel like maybe they've just hit a glass ceiling, like, I hit a million or a half million, but I can't grow anymore. The thing that I like to ask folks is, right now, what is it that you want? And I've asked this not 5 years out, not 3 years out, but this calendar year, as we record in 2024, what do you want personally? And then what do you want professionally in your career and your business? And that could be two, could be three different things. And I think until you can write that down and say, I want to be able to buy a lake home, or I want to be able to take my family on a cruise, or whatever the thing is. And then maybe I want to lose some weight, or I want to get in shape. I want to do X, hit X revenue with my business. It's great to have three different wants with your vision. And then that cascades into goals. And when I talk about goals with marketing, I talk about them very similarly with businesses. So often the goals we have currently, are not generally big enough. And so after reading the book 10x is easier than 2x, this hit me like a lightning bolt because it's something it's kind of been inside of me, but I never knew how to articulate it. Was I had been that person who was trying to 2x my business, and I lived in a 2x mindset, which I thought was good. And then I realized 2x just means working more, which is the old definition of hustle. People get burned out. They don't sleep as much. They don't take care of their health or their maybe what they're eating with their diet. They don't prioritize relationships or friendships and things like that. And they burn out. And so I think it's important to be crystal clear with what you want and then put that into a goal and say, I need to not only, I don't want to just lose 10 pounds, I want to lose 50 pounds. Or I don't want to just get in shape. I want to get in shape enough to run a marathon. Because if all we do is train for a 5K, what am I going to do? Walk more? I'm going to run around the block a few more times. That's not a transition, or that's not really transformation. That's very moderate change, and that's 2x behavior. If you really, really want to double down, 10x, you have to transform your behaviors and your actions. And those are the types of things that we try to get our clients to recognize. Is hustle in our business doesn't mean working more. It doesn't mean sacrificing your health, your diet, your relationships, your spouse, your marriage, things like that. It just means let's get crystal clear what we want. Let's set goals. Let's hold ourselves accountable, and let's start taking massive action, prioritizing things, because that's to me what it's all about. I'll be honest with you. I think some of this stuff is so easy, it's borderline embarrassing. When you start to learn this is what it takes for me to get to where I want to be. It's really, really simple.
So, what do you think? Because I agree with you. That's what I see with a lot of my coaching clients too. What do you think it keeps people from actually doing things? Because a lot of these concepts are not rocket science, like you said. They're simple things that you can follow. What is it that keep most people from really achieving their potential and everything that they can, given that the recipe is easy to follow?
Yeah, so we've got some good friends that run a coaching program and wrote a book, and they do something similar to what we do. And in the book, they call it the twin thieves, which is the fear of failure and the fear of judgment. And if it's not one, it's the other. Everyone, man, woman, young, old, doesn't matter what our track record is. We always have this kind of devil and angel sitting on our shoulders. And sometimes it's the fear of failure and the fear of judgment. We have to do a lot of work to kind of keep them at bay because people are always worried, well, if it doesn't work, what are people going to say? Well, if it does work, what are people going to say? They're always worried about it, like, oh, my mom and dad don't understand. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably have a lot of people in your circle who don't understand. People ask me like, oh, why do you work so much? I said, I don't know. It's not really work. I enjoy doing it, and I know it's getting me to a point to where I want to go, and so therefore it's enjoyment. And so I think you have to get past that. And I think the other thing is that we as human beings are creatures of nature, and we just like to get into a habit and do the same thing over and over and over. And so it is hard to get to a point to say, you know what? Yeah, every night when I get home after work, I watch Netflix for 3 hours. It's hard to say, you know what, instead of doing that, get a half hour workout in and then read for an hour. I made that transformation. It's actually not very hard, but in your mind, it's like, a lot of work. When I started doing that, I turned off the news. I'm on my 19th book this year. I'm about to wrap it up. And before that, I maybe read 2 or 3 books a year, tops. And I've just made it a priority. And on average, it's only about 20 minutes a day. And because I'm not watching the news or TV, I can fall asleep easier at night. I don't have that negativity from the news, which you're going to see headlines here and there just to keep yourself up to date enough if you care. And I just feel so fulfilled mentally because I'm learning. I'm a better person for it. And if you want to change something, it just starts by saying, okay, what do I need? Well, if you want to start reading, you need books. So I've got about 10 books in queue and I feel guilty. I've probably spent $150, $200 on these books from Amazon and they're just sitting on a bookshelf waiting for me. I'm like, I gotta read it. I'm committed. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to 50 books this year. Probably not, but I'll come close. That's it. It's just change. You have to tell yourself that, this is why I'm changing. This is how I'm going to do it. I know my business partner Justin always says that he's got a hard time working out unless he puts his clothes out the night before. He's like, I wake up, it's dark, I don't want to get up and then it's like, what am I going to put on and where are my socks and then where are my shoes and then where's my armband for my phone? He's like, if I don't put it there, it doesn't happen. Now, that's not a problem for me, but if that's the problem for you, set your clothes out so that there's no excuse. And I always say this, if it's important to you, you'll put it on your calendar or your schedule. And if it's not, it won't happen. So if it's not there, it must not be a priority.
That mindset is really the main thing here. Like, breaking through those limiting beliefs of trust and self confidence and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And just, getting it done and finding the reasons to do things versus the reasons not to do things. I'm on book 16, so I need to catch up with you. But yeah, let's keep ourselves accountable to the 50 is a good goal. I didn't set up a goal. I just wanted to read more this year than I have been, and it's a good way to just little steps, right? So let's talk about this concept of the daily victory. What does that look like, and how can that help businesses and people kind of identify and achieve these things?
Yeah, so it was kind of something I just came up with a couple years ago was for the longest time I would use notebooks to kind of manage my day. And yeah, I had a Google Calendar, an iOS calendar where I'd have my meetings on there. But that's just kind of managing your day. That's you getting to the meetings you need to get to. That is not priority, that's not managing goals. That's not goal execution. That is just like, oh, I need to be here. Well, that's where I'm going to go. So it's got to be on my calendar. So I went from having a notebook, and my business partner had a planner, and he liked it, but it just wasn't right for him. And I said the same thing. I said, I stopped using planners a long time ago because I couldn't find one that was right for me. And we ended up creating our own, which not here to sell that. But the idea was to get your goals in front of you. Because as I always told my wife, if I didn't do something, I always said, well, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. I can be very forgetful at times. So if I don't put something on my list or in my calendar, or if I don't set it out the day before, I will probably forget about it. And that's just me. That's my biggest weakness. So what I did was the same thing was happening with my goals. I would do a self audit at the end of every year, and I'd look back at kind of my victories and kind of where I fell flat and maybe some opportunities. And I always felt for many, many years, I just felt like I was capable of so much more. It was never getting me to where I wanted to go. And so when all this hustle leadership stuff came together, the one thing that I always felt like and talked about with my business partner is I said, if I could just start stacking victories, it'd be better. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, if I won, 3 out of 5 days a week, I'd win the week, I think. And if I won 3 weeks out of four, I'd win the month. And he's like, well, then what? You'd win the quarter? And I said, well, yeah, if I won the quarter, I'd probably win the year if I won all four quarters at that rate. And he said, well, maybe we need to create a better planner. So we did. And that to me was a big light bulb moment where it allowed me to keep my goals in front of me, not only on a daily basis, but a weekly basis, because my weekly goals are different from my quarterly goals. And my quarterly goals are different from my annual goals. So just to zoom out, we only really focus on the calendar year, so 2024. So at the end of this year, I've got a couple of, personal goals that I want to reach in terms of income. I've got a couple of business goals, and then I've got just a couple personal wish list things that I'd like to maybe buy for the family. And that's it. Just very, very simple stuff. But my weekly goals, they map to that, because if I can get to where I want to be on the quarter, it's likely I'll get to where I want to be on the month, on the year. So basically, I said, I need to win the week. Actually, I do that by stacking daily victories with my planner, my calendar, my notes, just really being hyper organized. And as long as I have my vision, I have my goals, my daily planner is my execution guide, if you will. And I've got it right here, just a simple daily planner. I'll tell you what, physically and mentally, it's given me a lot of confidence. Fewer things will slip through the cracks. And so, as my wife calls it, I have a higher follow through rate. And that's obviously great with family and spousal relationships, but it's also great with your clients. It's great with your business. And it does, as a byproduct, eliminates a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress that we put on ourselves, because we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to miss things. We're going to forget about stuff. And so if you can dangle that carrot in front of you, which is, this was my vision that I said I wanted, this were the goals that I said I wanted to achieve. Well, I've got to do these actions this week to win the week. I've got to do these actions this week, next week, and the next 2 weeks to win the month, to help me win the quarter. And so when you start to put one and one together, you're like, oh, well, that equals two. Now I won the month. Well, if you put two, and two together, now you've got six and you won the quarter. And you can do the rest of the math from there. But that's really what it's about. And it goes back to what I said before, which is just, it's almost so simple and so easy, it's embarrassing. That's what a lot of us need. We need simplicity to be successful.
Yep, that goes along a good concept I teach to build confidence is that daily challenge, that daily win that you have, that you hold on to that feeling. It can be something small, but the building that habit of feeling confident and feeling like you're winning, and little by little, that's going to transform your overall confidence. So
I would also recommend people just have a daily gratitude thought. So, what are you grateful for today? It can't be the same thing every day, but you have to think, because when you take a moment and you say, you know what, I am grateful. Like this was something. You can take a failure or something you fell short on and say, you know what, I didn't get it, but I learned that I can't do X and Y, because if I do that again, I will come up short again. So I'm grateful that I learned that today so that I can not do that tomorrow and next week.
Very good. Chris, tell everybody where to find you if they want to work with you and take advantage of all these great principles that you talked about today.
Yeah, well, Nata, first, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity and the great conversation. Love the questions. If you like anything I had to say, I produce a lot of content. Our podcast is on YouTube, Hustle Nation Podcast. You can listen to that anywhere. We talk to a lot of business leaders about success and adversity and mindset, goal setting, things like that. I also have a personal website, which is iamchrisburns.com. You can find us at hustleleaders.com or also on LinkedIn, Chris in /Chris B. Burns. So kind of everywhere at any social media platform you can typically find me.
Love that. We'll link all of that for you guys. And also, we'll put a link for Chris's book because I want to make sure that you guys have access to that. Thank you so much, Chris. I think we had amazing tips and strategies for everybody to utilize. I'm so happy that you joined me today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. And we'll see you next week in another episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nata Salvatori, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.